The case that gripped Norway decades ago has come back to haunt the country. The abuse and murders of two innocent girls led to a rash decision that cost an innocent man years of his life. Now the entire country is asking what really happened at Baneheia, and how did the courts get this so wrong? Keep watching to understand what happened and why there was a miscarriage of justice in this horrendous crime. Kindly consider hitting that subscribe button if you're liking my videos. Now, on to the case. Baneheia is a popular recreational area within walking distance of central Kristiansand in southern Norway. It's ideal for hiking, swimming, and birdwatching, and offers fantastic views across the city and coastline. The lake called Three Stamp, or Stampa, is a popular swimming lake with a couple of small beaches and nice water temperatures during summer. So there was nothing unusual when on a warm day in May 2000, two young local girls went to Baneheia to swim in a lake. Stine Sophie Sørstronen and Lena Sløgedal Paulsen were visiting with their fathers, who both lived in the same block of flats close to the Baneheia forest. Stine Sophie was born in the small town of Evje in the north of Aust-Agder in May 1992. After a few years, her parents divorced, and Stine Sophie moved to Grimstad with her older brother Christopher, her mother Ada, and stepfather Hans Christian. Stine Sophie loved being with her stepfather, and he quickly became one of her best friends. She tried to help him with most things, everything from painting to woodcutting. It's clear that they had a strong bond. Stine Sophie also thought it was great to visit her dad, who now lived in Kristiansand. Here she also got together with her friend Lena, who was 2 years older. They lived upstairs in their house in Grim, and could run back and forth to each other as they pleased. It was here that the two girls took their last swimming trip to Baneheia together. The girls departed their residence between 6:15 p.m. and 6:20 p.m. Two college students, also swimming at the location, reported seeing the girls in the water when they left at approximately 6:50 p.m. But when they hadn't returned home by 11 p.m., the parents reported the girls missing, initiating a large-scale search operation. Police and canine units immediately began searching the area. By morning, over 50 Norwegian Red Cross volunteers joined the search, soon increasing to hundreds. Sea King and police helicopters were deployed, along with rescue and civilian divers to search local water bodies. Volunteer mountaineers explored nearby cliffs, while firefighters surveyed shorelines. On May 20th, 16 electronic listening posts were installed to detect low-volume sounds in case the girls were injured and unable to call for help. Even the faintest crying or sulking would have been easily detected. 2 days post-disappearance, police found a human skeleton near Otra River by Egg Hospital. At first, it was thought to be an unrelated case of a missing German tourist. It was later identified as a German psychiatric patient who had escaped years prior. At 5 p.m. that afternoon, police discovered bloodied clothing hidden under moss, approximately 50 meters west of Two Stampe Lake. Police and Home Guard personnel cordoned off the area. At 8:37 p.m., police confirmed both girls were found murdered at the site. The bodies of the two little girls were found hidden under pine branches in a small slab rock crack a few dozen meters west of the pond, which is one of several ponds that constitutes a much frequented bathing area for the populace in Kristiansand. Traces of blood were also found across the scene along with the girls' clothes and shoes. They had been sexually assaulted, tied up, strangled, and stabbed to death. Upon receiving the news, the reaction among the hundreds of search and rescue personnel on site was one of enormous grief, many breaking down and weeping inconsolably, others walking around in a state of shock. Following the discovery, police began a murder investigation. Prime Minister Jens Stoltenberg and Justice Minister Hanne Harlem pledged full support for the investigation. Unfortunately, despite receiving approximately 150 tips, leads were scarce. Kristiansand police weren't giving up, though. They were optimistic the case would be resolved soon. Usually, an average of 200 people frequented Baneheia on Friday nights. On the night in question, around 100 people were present. There was a place for recreational drug users 200 meters from the crime scene. Police interviewed numerous regular visitors to the area. The location had a history of exhibitionist and voyeur activity, too. Investigations included questioning former sex offenders, local convicted rapists, murderers, and escaped psychiatric patients. Similar crimes in Sweden and Norway were examined for potential connections. Even child murders in England were reviewed. Victims' friends reported a previous incident of a suspicious man following the girls while swimming. Håkon Skolstad, acting chief of the Criminal Investigation Service, also considered the possibility of a perpetrator who was just passing the area and had already left. This would be the worst-case scenario since he would be harder to catch. However, forensic psychiatrists Berthold Grunfeld and Kjell Norreich suggested the likelihood of a local man in his 30s without prior criminal record or serious mental illness. Local police theorized about 2 perpetrators, since it would be difficult for a single person to control both victims at the same time. Safe to say the police were at their wits' end for the longest time. The summer came and went. There were no arrests made in the case. People were desperate for news, but there was little information. While the police were doing a more thorough search for forensic evidence at the scene, however, they stumbled upon a breakthrough, a 3-centimeter strand of hair. After 3 months, the police finally had the answer they were looking for. They made a list of the search and rescue team and officers who'd been at the scene, but the list also included 2 other names, Viggo Christiansen and Jan Helge Andersen. Andersen's DNA was a perfect match with pubic hairs found on the scene. On September 13, after keeping him under surveillance for 48 hours, they arrested 19-year-old Andersen and charged him with the double murder. He had no previous criminal record. Christiansen was arrested at the same time as Andersen, although they still didn't have any evidence on him. Everyone who knew the 2 boys had the same reaction, saying, "It's a huge shock. They're nice, helpful boys." Upon his arrest, Andersen initially denied having anything to do with the murders, even when confronted with DNA evidence. Moments later, when lead interrogator Geir Hansen suggested that Andersen himself could be a victim in the case, and that Christiansen could have been the most active participant, Andersen admitted that he murdered one of the girls. He also named 21-year-old Christiansen as murderer of the other girl. After luring the girls into the woods by claiming to have kittens, Andersen said that he acted as lookout while Christiansen essayed the 2 girls, and that he was forced to kill Lena after fearing she would scream. Christiansen, however, vehemently denied having anything to do with the murders. The 2 suspects were close friends and had been seen by witnesses in Baneheia on the day of the murders. By order of Prosecutor General Tor Axel Busch, both men were charged with identical crimes of essay and premeditated murder. Central to the evidence against Christiansen was Andersen's explanation that it was the former friend who was the initiator, instigator, and active party throughout the course of events. The explanation fit well into the picture the prosecution drew of the domineering and temperamental Christiansen and the power he had over the quiet and resigned Andersen. In addition, and unrelated to the murders, Christiansen was charged with abusing and essaying a girl under the age of 10, indecent assault against a boy under the age of 10, and for looking at a woman through her window while she was getting undressed. He confessed to these separate crimes during an interrogation in October. Christiansen tearfully confessed that he had sexually abused a girl 5 times when he was between 15 and 17 years old. In questioning, he has also admitted that the girl cried and expressed that what he did to her was painful. Christiansen also confessed to the charges of the woman, but not for the charges of the boy. But despite it all, he pleaded not guilty to the charge of 2 counts of premeditated murder and essay in the Baneheia case. Christiansen was found guilty on all counts and sentenced to 21 years imprisonment, which is the maximum life sentence in Norway. Andersen was found guilty of 1 count of murder and essay, and sentenced to 19 years in prison. According to the verdict, Christiansen was the leading force behind the crime. It is worth noting that at the time Christiansen was arrested, there was no evidence against him other than that he was best friends with Andersen. Andersen provided a new version to his story shortly after his arrest. Anderson explained he met Christiansen unexpectedly on May 19, 2000, and they decided to walk together in Baneheia. He remembers Christiansen leaving his bike at the car park. The bike was locked and leaned against the gate, and he also had his mobile phone on him, which is a detail Anderson claimed he was certain of. The pair walked along the west side of Svartjørn. After a few hundred meters, they turned left on a track going south. Then they walked down the path towards Three Stamp Lake. About 20 to 25 meters before they reached the lake, they took a track leading to the right. They encountered two girls and lured them with a story about moving kittens. Christiansen allegedly produced a knife and threatened the girls, forcing them to undress. He then sexually assaulted both girls separately, while Anderson claims he turned away. Christiansen stabbed the older girl in the throat and stomach, after which he forced Anderson to kill the younger girl under threat of death. They hid the bodies under juniper branches and disposed of evidence in a dam wall. The two split up and agreed on separate routes home. Police searched the suspects' homes, noting significant differences between their rooms. Investigators found various items, including Molotov cocktails and sex videos. During the search, this gave prosecutors ammo that Christiansen was obsessed with pornography and SA. Anderson, on the other hand, never showed any signs of remorse, seeing himself as another victim of his co-defendant. Court psychiatrists noted his striking tendency to blame every aspect of the crime on Christiansen, but could not agree on a definite diagnosis. In the end, it was Anderson's statement which was the main pillar in the verdict against Christiansen. Still insisting he was innocent, Christiansen went to the Court of Appeal, where he was sentenced to the same punishment once more. But he was not giving up. He took his fight to the Supreme Court, where his appeal was rejected and the judgment became final. When sentencing, the court emphasized both the indictments relating to the Baneheia murders and the indictments relating to the abuse of another girl. He pleaded not guilty, but was not believed. According to the verdict, Christiansen was the initiator, instigator, and ringleader in the execution of the terrible acts to which the conviction applies. The court also emphasized Christiansen's psychological profile and history of child abuse, and the forensic psychiatric expert Kjell Norway stated that Christiansen can be perceived as dangerous, emphasizing that he has pedophile traits along with little or no possibility of improvement, and that there is an imminent danger of repetition of violent acts and abuse. Christiansen served time in Isla Prison and Detention Center. He trained as a welder in the prison and was a gang boy in the ward, that is, a trustee for the inmates responsible for order in the ward. He didn't give up and kept trying to prove his innocence in the Baneheia case from behind bars. His persistence finally paid off. The Reinstatement Commission decided in February 2021 by 3-2 votes that the case should be resumed. It was Christiansen's fifth reinstatement petition, and the seventh time a reinstatement petition was processed, including 2 complaints about previous refusals. The Commission's majority concluded there was a reasonable possibility Christiansen could have been acquitted. The counsel for the victims' families criticized Christiansen's multiple reinstatement requests, stating they denied peace to the bereaved. The victims' relatives expressed concern about what they perceived as an unbalanced media portrayal favoring Christiansen. Some experts noted that DNA and mobile evidence were downplayed in the original verdict, while Anderson's testimony was emphasized. The public prosecutor's grounds for acquittal aligned with arguments presented by the defense lawyer in the original 2002 trial. In December 2022, Christiansen was acquitted in the Baneheia case. The Court of Appeal also handed down a verdict for the assaults that Christiansen had confessed to. He was sentenced to 10 months imprisonment on those counts, and this sentence was deemed to have been served. In July 2024, Anderson was convicted of both murders, and the Sør-Rogaland District Court then concluded that Anderson was alone in Baneheia. When the verdict was read out, everyone in the courtroom stood upright, and Anderson appeared emotionless and did not make a face, looking down at his desk. The court points out, among other things, that Anderson has changed his explanation regarding which of the 2 girls he assaulted. Originally, he explained that he had molested Lena. but later changed this to Steen Sophie. The court doubted Anderson's explanation on this point because there was a big difference in size between the two girls. They concluded that it is unlikely that Anderson would not have known which of the girls he assaulted. The court believed he had done this to adapt his story to the evidence in the case. In the original case, he was convicted of the assault and murder of Steen Sophie, as well as complicity in the assault of Lena. Anderson's DNA has been found in the new investigation on both girls. No DNA from Christiansen has been found. The court also believes that the murders were planned because the girls were killed with a knife. In his explanation, Anderson claimed that the murders happened spontaneously, which the court doubts. According to the verdict, the manner in which the girls were killed also indicates that it is the same perpetrator. But on this point, there were disagreements. The reason for that is that one person may have seen how the other did it or learned the same method somewhere else. But the similarity of the injuries to the girls is striking, the verdict shows. According to the prosecutor, teledata is in reality proof of exclusion for Christiansen. It has not been possible to make measurements that indicate that Christiansen's phone was at the scene. The nearest base station to which the phone was connected does not cover the crime scene. Christiansen's bicycle was also not parked where Anderson claims. A witness particularly interested in bicycles stayed at this location and told the court that he was sure he did not see the bicycle there. Acquitted, Christiansen demanded compensation of $8 million. He has already been awarded $5 million, so the media expects that he will take legal action against the state. Christiansen's acquittal, however, led to a huge backlash against the courts. The Baneheia case was called one of the biggest judicial murders in history. The courts believed Anderson's explanation so much that they disregarded ambiguities about DNA evidence and mobile phone evidence. The parents of the two girls got restraining orders against Christiansen to make sure he doesn't try to contact them. Christiansen planned to keep a low profile out of consideration for them. He declined to talk to reporters assembled both at the prison and around his family's home. Following the murders in Baneheia, Ada Sophie decided to set up a foundation in her daughter's name. She had long had a commitment to children who experience violence and abuse, and a strong desire to do something. Together with their friend Bente Bergseth, they created the Steen Sophie's Foundation. She has ever since been active in promoting laws to protect children on the national level. On 10th May 2024, Steen Sophie would have turned 32, while Lena would have been 34. Who would Steen be today is a question Ada Sophie constantly asks herself, a question she will never get an answer to. According to her mother, Steen Sophie loved attention and loved singing and dancing, but Steen was also a tough and independent girl. Among others, legislation was sponsored guaranteeing children the right to a public attorney in cases where they are victims of violent or sexual crimes, as well as starting the first national helpline for children. Former Minister of Justice Knut Storberget called the murders the decisive watershed moment in terms of turning the police effort against the violence that affects women and children. What did you think of the case? Were the punishments Anderson and Christiansen got justified? How do you think the justice system should have handled this? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Gain the investigator's insight by subscribing. You'll get the first look at every new case we uncover. Until next time, bye for now.